Well, welcome everybody. Hello, and good day to you. Uh, this is Michael Sunlightner, of course, and you can see me, and I can see only two of you. If your technology permits, faces, and if you don't want your pictures to be recorded, I understand, but it is good for community if we can see one another. So do that if you're able to. Greetings to you all. Hello, Ali. Hello, so many good people. Hello, Sushil. I think at this point we have somewhere like 30 students, 30 attendees who are enrolled in this program from at
Good
least 12. We are a global gathering, and I'm pleased to see so many people who share an interest in Gandhi and nonviolence, soul force, and social change. Today, we have the same format. I will ask in a moment, is there anything you want to talk about? And if you have questions about the previous session and want to discuss human nature, that's fine. If you have some political or other issues in the news you would like to briefly talk about, that's fine. We can then go on to the program for today, which relates to nonviolence, peace, and peace studies. Basically, today I'm laying some foundation for us to have a broad view of these concepts and peace studies programs, so that we can have that in mind when we talk about Gandhi beginning next week and King beginning about a month from now. And then, of course, there will be time for discussion. So the three parts of the course are: do you have any questions? Anything you want to discuss? 2, the content for the day, nonviolence, peace, and peace studies. And 3, certainly time to discuss what we have been able to share. So, is there anything you want to talk about for about 10 minutes or so? Maybe longer if there's a need.
May I ask one question?
Of course you can.
As we have already heard 2 days for this course, and today is the third day, and yesterday you have mentioned that you want from us a para of reflection. Is it okay if we, especially for me, if I give 3 days reflection in 3 para in one after completing 1 week lecture? Is it okay, or you want daily basis?
No. Daily basis is chaos. From 30 people, this would be difficult. As I mentioned yesterday, what I would prefer is after the first 9 sessions, perhaps you have attended 7 of the 9. Then you would have 7 paragraphs you could then send to me. If they come all around February 15th, then I will have time to look at them before we meet 4 or 5 days later, and I can give you feedback. Is that reasonably clear?
Yes.
That's what I would prefer. But of course, if you would like to talk personally, you can certainly not send a mere paragraph about a class session. We can talk for 30 minutes, one-on-one, if you want to visit with me. It's all a matter of timing. because of our time differences, it would mean in most cases, like if you were in India, you would need to be trying to phone me probably between about 8 in the morning and 10 at night, because that's otherwise I might be sleeping. If you have an emergency, of course, you can wake me up from sleep and we will talk in the middle of the night. Okay?
Yes, yes. Okay, I'm done.
No problem. Thank you, Lubna. Are there others that have anything you would like to discuss regarding the course, regarding human nature, regarding the news that might be bothering you? Sibby Joseph is with us. He has sent out the link and also, I think, a visual of the book he mentioned yesterday, the autobiography of Martin Luther King. Thank you, Sibby. I do want to emphasize, though I've not read that book, that it is not an autobiography. I find it very, very odd that people would have that in the title. An autobiography is something written by the person themselves, about themselves. Yes? That's what most people understand an autobiography to be. Um, Martin Luther King never wrote a book about himself. He wrote only 4 books, and none of them was his own autobiography. So this Mr. Claiborne may be very knowledgeable. He may have pieced together quotations from Dr. King and put it skillfully into a form that looks like an autobiography. But I don't think it should be called that. Can I write an autobiography of Gandhi? Can I write an autobiography of Sibby Joseph? Yeah, how silly would that be? I mean, I might be able to write a biography and I might be able to throw together quotations from Sibby Joseph over the period of his lifetime. But I am not Sibby Joseph. I should not be writing an autobiography of Sibby Joseph.
Yeah, in Bangla autobiography we call Attokatha, means when himself or herself speeches.
Yes. And
Yes.
so it may be a very, very good book, Sibby. I don't know. I will try to look at it.
Yes.
But the title seems like a publisher's ploy to sell books. That's what it sounds like to me. Are there other things that people would like to discuss this day? I see we
I
have
had the opportunity to
yes.
meet Claiborne Carson when the book was out. At that time, I was working as the dean at the Institute of Gandhian Studies, and he was awarded the Jamnalal Bajaj International Award, and he came to Wardha, and we had a meeting. And also, I was in touch with him, and I think both of them were contemporaries, and they were so close.
Well, again, that could very well be, and it may be an outstanding book. But should Coretta Scott King,
No, it should not
the
be given as
doc,
the autobiography of that. I agree with you.
could his own wife write an autobiography of Martin Luther King? I would say no. By the way, she did write an autobiography of herself called My Life with Martin Luther King. And Coretta Scott King's book is quite good. I even got it autographed. It's the only time I had a book autographed. No, 2 times. Nirmal Kumar Bose, one of Gandhi's personal secretaries, also autographed a book that he gave to me relating to Mahatma Gandhi when I was first in India in 1972. And both of those books I have given away. You know, to people who would value the signatures. Yes. So let us begin this session, if you like. We can always return to anything we've discussed in a previous session. If you want to, we can always do that. My idea is that, let's say in our 15th session together, maybe there is a subject that we discussed in session 10 that you would like to revisit and integrate in more clearly in your learning process. Well, we will return to whatever previous discussion we may have had. I think it is good for educational purposes to do that. So we understand. Now today, in response, I think in part to one of our attendees who yesterday said, I want to clarify, what is the difference between nonviolence and peace? Yes? And so let us look. There, somehow I got muted, but I'm back. Amit, you have managed to put up the slide. And some of you who are able to see this slide see that it is kind of an outline of what I hope to cover in the next hour together. So first, nonviolence, then peace studies. Now, for 10 or 15 minutes, nonviolence, that is not a simple concept. Of course, it sounds different in different languages, but it is different in many ways in different cultures. And I would suggest that we can think of nonviolence either like it sounds, as a negative, non-violence, not violence, or we can also look at it in positive formulations. So first, as a negative, it means not to violate, not to do harm, not to disrespect, not to transgress, not to break, for example, as in a promise. Nonviolence can be all of these things in its negative form. And it can be, of course, complicated because, for example, not to do harm, which of course will be ahimsa, which is Gandhi's concept of nonviolence, ahimsa, not harm or not injury. Even that can be complicated. I'm not trying to confuse you. I'm just trying to encourage you to understand that, kind of like the story of the blind people and the elephant, people will look at the same thing, the elephant, from different points of view, from different cultural and other perspectives. I'm not sure if everyone has heard the story of the blind people and the elephant. Let us tell that story, And that might help us grasp that there is one nonviolence, there is one elephant, but it can be looked at from different points of view, okay? The story is sometimes described as Buddhist or Jain. It certainly comes from India. And sometimes it's 3 blind men, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 7. The story is the same. There are several blind people. Yes? One touches the tail of the elephant and says, aha, the elephant is like a rope. And of course, that is because he's touching the tail. Another one touches the leg of the elephant, says, no, no, no. The elephant is like a large tree trunk. Another touches the ear of the elephant. No, the elephant is like a banana leaf. Another one touches the body of the elephant and says, no, the elephant is like a big water tank. And you get the idea. They are all right and wrong at the same time. Yes? They all have a piece of truth. The elephant is like a rope. It is like a banana leaf. It is like a water tank. Yes? And Gandhi had no trouble with this. He called it the doctrine of anekantavada, the many-sidedness of truth. This is a concept we will discuss beginning next week when we get into Gandhi. So when nonviolence is thought of as not to violate, not to harm, not to disrespect, not to break a promise, these are not all different. They may be seen as blind people, blinded by their own culture, blinded by their own experiences, by their gender, male or female, by their color, white, black, brown. Yes, we all have different contexts that we see things, and they may all be right. Gandhi suggests that we should try to listen to one another, learn from one another, admit that we are also blind, and that we do not have the absolute truth ourselves. And if we learn from all of the blind people touching or seeking the same truth, like what is the elephant or what is nonviolence, we will be able to grasp more clearly the whole concept, the whole thing. So I suggest nonviolence is, of course, often thought of as a negative. Not to violate, not to do harm. Yes? It can also be thought of as a positive. And this is, I think, very important because it is a positive concept, even though it is, in language, non-violence. Yes? So oftentimes, in a positive way, nonviolence is thought of as love, kindness, compassion. Those are 3 of the big ones. Though there are always problems in translation, compassion would probably be the word a Buddhist might use. Kindness would be a word more likely for a Muslim to use. Love, especially agapic, self-sacrificing love, would be the primary concept that a Christian might use. Well, I would ask you, what is the difference between kindness, compassion, and love? There are 3 different words, but it may be that 3 blind people are touching the same concept and just looking at it from different points of view. Is one right, one wrong? what is the essence of nonviolence? It may be beyond words. You, is someone say something? Yes, Idal.
Well, kindness, you can be kind if you are non-violence, if you believe in non-violence and living in peace, you can be kind to everybody. Compassion, you can have that feeling for others, for any cause, for any issue, but love for maybe special people. Although we for some religion, you have to love all people, to be kind to all people, to be compassionate, but that's not always easy. You can people be kind to strangers, those who are not affecting you directly. You can have compassion for their cause or whatever. But I don't. Sometimes I wonder if these emotions are real. It's easy to have kindness to others, to strangers, but maybe it's difficult for those around you more. Sometimes, yeah.
Well, we didn't say nonviolence is easy.
Yeah. Sure.
And if we had Muhammad, praise be unto his name, Buddha, and Jesus on a panel discussion chaired by Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, any of them say this is easy? I don't think anybody would say that. Especially if, like Jesus would say very clearly, what love have you if you love only those who love you? Even the Pharisees do that. You must love the moneylenders. You must love the prostitutes. You must love those who are criminals. You must love universally. This is in the Gospels of Jesus. And I think you find Buddha, hate cannot destroy hate. Only love can destroy hate. The only way you can destroy cycles of revenge and retaliation and hatred is by love. It's not easy. I do think that Muhammad was talking about the same thing, just from a different cultural point of view. And I'm not trying to confuse anyone, but you perhaps need to decide what nonviolence means for you. But it is not to do harm, that's clear, and it is to be caring for others even if they don't care about you. That can be a family member, that can be anyone. But this is the way that many of the great leaders, religious leaders of the world, say we need to live if we are going to have harmony together. I would say this is the way we need to seriously commit ourselves if we are to not destroy the world as we know it. Because in this day and age, to do violence and intentionally is to threaten life on the planet with nuclear weapons, with chemical biological weapons, with eco disaster that causes climate change. We have the capacity now, more so than any time in history, to kill ourselves, which would be perhaps the ultimate violence, yes? The ultimate disrespect for the creator or the force which gave rise to life. There's one more thing to say about nonviolence that we can come back to later. And I think this is not often examined. And that is, there are cultures, and this is true for Jewish, Christian, and Islamic cultures especially, that are very binary, very dualistic in the way they look at the world. This is not completely a criticism, but it is an observation. When someone says, we must choose between violence and nonviolence, that's Martin Luther King. He's very much in a binary, dualistic way of looking at things. You're either black or white, violent or nonviolent, good or evil, male or female, damned or saved, either or, either or. This is a binary cultural perspective. And it makes things more simple. We can judge much more easily. You're right or wrong. I'm wrong. And yet it may not show the complexity of nonviolence. Many more Eastern traditions, Lao Tzu in Taoism in China, certainly Mahavira in Jainism in India, I think Buddhists, Gandhi himself was not so dualistic. He would say, as we will discuss later in the class, we are all both violent and nonviolent at the same time. Yes, we must choose to be more nonviolent, but all of us have both violence and nonviolence. All of us are both right and wrong. All of us are both good and evil. All of us are both male and female. These binary categories do not reflect the complexity of the human experience. And someone like Gandhi is very difficult for people in Western cultures to understand. Because when you look at Gandhi from a dualistic either or point of view, you don't really understand his more both and multifaceted, non-dualistic way of looking at things. That is part of why studying Gandhi and King is very helpful, because they mean different things by nonviolence, partly because Gandhi is more non-dualistic and King is more dualistic. And so this gets to be cause for great reflection. And just to put a little humor in this, well, we cannot look at binary and non-binary in dualistic ways. Maybe it is both binary and non-binary. If you're following, it may be that it is that complicated. Maybe we should listen to the blind person and the elephant who says, this is either violent or nonviolent. Maybe we should listen to the blind person and the elephant who says, no, this is both violent and nonviolent. And maybe both of them have an insight into the nature of the elephant that we need to appreciate. Now, if I haven't totally confused you, we can move on to peace. But I would like us to see that nonviolence in most any language, and certainly the English language, has many synonyms, many ways of describing not to violate, not to do harm, not to disrespect. And it has positive formulations that include showing universal kindness, showing universal compassion, showing universal agapic love, self-sacrificing love. And even if we don't understand the concept perfectly, I hope we can begin to feel it in our hearts. Because I believe ultimately, nonviolence is not a matter of mental understanding. It is good to be academic and rational and have some idea of nonviolence. But in many ways, nonviolence or kindness or love is something that is a feeling. That is, we know it when we feel it. How do I describe the love for my wife? Is it a rational calculation that made me marry my wife? Was this a good contract, a good match, good for my career, whatever? Will we make pretty babies? Well, is that really what love was about? I don't think so. It was a feeling, yes? And that feeling, when it takes root, means that I am willing to die for my wife. I care about her so deeply that she and I are one. And I need to be willing to sacrifice for my wife. I need to be willing ultimately to die for my wife or my friend. What greater love does any person have that for them to be willing to die for their friend? And that is, of course, a quote from Jesus in the Gospels. And I'm sure we could find similar statements from Muhammad, Buddha, and many others. Is there more that you would like to discuss regarding nonviolence? We will see how Gandhi and King have different views of this. And perhaps we will struggle when we ask ourselves, am I believing more like Gandhi or do I believe more like King? But understand, you don't have to choose one or the other. You can be both. You can accept insights from Gandhi. You can accept insights from King. You can accept insights from Sibi Joseph. You can accept insights from Lubna, from Ali, from others in this program. Yes? To understand anything perfectly in this world may be very difficult. And to practice nonviolence in a very serious way is a big challenge. I must love my enemy as myself. I can't do that. Other people have. Why can't you? In fact, that's something that King would say. Gandhi would say, I don't need to love my enemy because I don't have any enemy. Ha! Gandhi doesn't even have an enemy concept. He doesn't frame his opponents as enemies. They're all members of the same family. So to have an enemy concept is almost dualistic in itself. You're my enemy or you're not. You're with me or you're against me. This is a perspective of people like Frantz Fanon, the Algerian, no, actually the Martinican revolutionary in Algeria in the War of Independence of Algeria against France. Frantz Fanon was extremely binary. Doesn't mean he was bad. It just means culturally he looked at life in dualistic either-or categories. Gandhi doesn't do that very much. So keep that in mind. Let us go on, if we can, to peace. Peace, you can look at the slide, and of course you can download that slide if you want to look at it more carefully. Peace, I'd like to build on some insights that were given to us by Johan Galtung. Johan Galtung was a Norwegian academic who lived from 1930 to 2024. He left this world about a year ago. Also, he influenced and actually learned also some of his ideas from Elise Boulding. Elise Boulding was a woman in the United States who was a peace studies professor at the University of Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. She lived from 1920 to 2010. I myself never met Johan Galtung. I believe that Sibi Joseph did, and many others. I did have the privilege of communicating with and meeting Elise Boulding. Now, Galtung and Boulding and many others developed this idea of positive and negative peace. We've talked a little bit about negative and positive nonviolence. Well, let us think about this. Each of these people, Galtung and Boulding, would suggest we can look at the concept of peace on different levels, for example. There are at least 3, perhaps 5 or 6 different levels, but 3 levels of looking at peace would be individual, societal, and international. And oftentimes when we think of peace, these writers suggest, we think of international is not war. Peace is not war. Peace is defined as a negative. On a societal level, oftentimes it is not conflict, not conflictual, not conflict, again, negative. And on a personal level, peace is there when we are not stressed, not troubled, not anxious. Isn't it strange that a positive word like peace is so often thought of as a negative? It's not stressful, not conflictual, not war, not. Both Galtung and Elise Boulding found this very strange and worked hard conceptually to think of peace in a positive way. And as you can see in this little slide, what they came up with, and others, would be on the individual level, peace is the presence of self-respect, a positive thing, and by extension, respect for others. On a societal level, peace is the presence of equity. Equity meaning fairness. That has a cultural context, but we mentioned yesterday briefly how the ancient Greek thinker Plato thought that it was most fair and stable for a society to have the rich no more than 4 times more wealthy than the poor, a 4-to-1 ratio. That was fairness for Plato. A speaker in the International Fellowship Program hosted by Sibi Joseph about 2 weeks ago spoke about how in his company in Mexico, they have a rule that the highest salary should be no more than 50 times that of the lowest salary in the company, 50 to 1. The idea of equity or fairness can be negotiated. It could be 4 to 1, it could be 50 to 1, and yet it needs to be acceptable to everyone in the group, in the society. And so peace positively is, on a society level, the presence of equity, a feeling of fairness, where the people in the society say wealth is fairly distributed, status is fairly distributed. And the poor, if you have them at all, are all treated with the basic needs of life. They are assured basic needs. And then on the international level, Galtung and Bolding and others would say, peace is the presence of symbiosis. Oh my goodness, that's a crazy English word. But symbiosis, symbiosis. Symbiosis is the idea of functional interdependence. Functional interdependence. Peace is present when the family of nations is functionally interdependent. That is, they may trade with one another, they have diplomatic relations with one another, they treat others in that group of nations as they would want themselves to be treated. It is not a relationship of dominance. Dominance is colonialism, among other things. So when you define peace as the presence of self-respect, equity, and functional interdependence, well, then can Adolf Hitler be a peacemaker? I don't think so. He might think he is, but if you define peace this way, does Adolf Hitler respect others? No. He helped over 6 million people be exterminated in gas chambers. Does he provide equity for all? No, once again, he wants Germany to dominate over most of Europe and Russia. He believes in a master-slave relationship with the superior race controlling and exploiting inferior races. That is not equity. Not everyone agrees to that relationship. The slave does not want to be a slave. And is it functional interdependence? No, it is conquest. It is colonialism. It is control. Those who are in the relationship internationally are not voluntarily participating in the relationship. So when you define peace in a positive way, as Johann Galtung and Elise Bolding would suggest, Adolf Hitler does not qualify. I would say the United States of America does not qualify as a peacemaker. Not under Donald Trump and not under Joe Biden. Empires have a difficult time being peacemakers because the nature of empire is to control and exploit for the sake of the home country. Make America great again does not mean make the world at peace with itself? That's not the objective, you see? Having military bases in over 120 countries throughout the world is to assure the flow of resources to the United States. It's not an equitable or symbiotic relationship. So let us benefit from the research and the thinking of others. And yes, peace can be thought of as a negative. It can be thought of as a positive. I would like us to think of nonviolence more as a positive and peace as more of a positive, because to me that is more constructive to have a positive formulation. But you can make your own decision. What do you have to say about peace as a concept? I hope I have not been confusing, but again, it's a case of the blind people and the elephant. We need to listen to one another. But I think it is very helpful to think of peace as self-respect, economic and other equity, and the presence of functional interdependence. Anyone want to make a comment? We will have time for discussion in about 10 minutes.
Yo, Michael.
Yes, Nidal?
Yo, Michael, I have a question. Can I?
Just one question, because for the United States, powerful countries can do, I won't say peace or nonviolence by violence, or they force people to do peace sometimes. Maybe it gets benefit for the people that are fighting, that are in war, that are using always weapons. Maybe sometimes it gets benefits for both sides, to force them to be in peace, not in war all the time. Well, this is happening. We're living that situation here in Lebanon. Otherwise, there'll be war all the time.
In the short term, this may be true. And it certainly may be true experience. In some ways, it goes back to views of human nature. You'll recall that yesterday I was discussing Thomas Hobbes. And Thomas Hobbes believed that the natural state of human beings is a state of war or preparation for war. He had a view of human nature as being extremely aggressive and selfish, and that was his experience. And his solution was to have a supreme power in whom we can be in fear. We will not kill one another if we have a king elected for life who can take our life and punish us whenever we break the rules. Now, this is kind of an extreme idea, but is it at all similar to saying, let us give all power to the United Nations? Let us live under the rule of enforceable law worldwide so that we don't kill one another. This could be a solution, isn't it? To reducing at least war and suffering in the world. Martin Luther King would be more open to this idea. Gandhi is more critical of it. Because as we will see, Gandhi has a different view of human nature, and also will say, if whatever you gain by physical force, you will need to maintain by physical force. the means and the ends are interrelated for Gandhi. And so if you empower the United Nations with the good intention of ending wars throughout the world, what centralized power might do for good, centralized power may also do for destructive purposes. It all depends upon who is in charge of that centralized authority. Gandhi is not so excited about giving great power to a centralized authority because it can be good, used for good or not good. Today, a very progressive person may be the leader of the United Nations. Tomorrow, it may be another Adolf Hitler. Gandhi is one who's going to be arguing for decentralized power and for the empowering of people to bring peace to their own country, to their own neighborhood, to their own household. He wants to empower masses of people to be loving to their neighbors. He doesn't think that love or nonviolence can be enforced from the top down. It needs to come from the heart and come outwards from inside. But it is a good debate, and we will see. Part of this will be the differences between Gandhi and King. Gandhi believes in more decentralized power. King believes in more centralized power to be used to force people to be good. Or at least, as King would say, the law cannot make a person love me, but the law can prevent a person from hanging me. And that's a good step forward, according to King. Yes? It's nice to believe that your neighbors cannot break into your house and string you up by the neck until you're dead. That's against the law. We need to have laws against such things. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? We need to have laws against any nation attacking another nation, initiating a war without having any self-defense. When Israel attacked Syria recently and is still occupying portions of the Golan Heights, Syria had not attacked Israel. Syria has been part of wars against Israel in the past, but the revolution in Syria recently itself was showing no hostility towards the state of Israel. And yet Israel attacked, didn't they? Because they wanted security, fearing that in a future Syria may be a danger to us. Someone like Gandhi is going to say, is this really treating other people as you want them to treat you? Is this consistent with the golden rule? It may make rational sense, but what are we going to reap if we sow that sort of behavior? Internationally, if Israel can attack Syria that is now posing no military threat to Israel, why shouldn't Venezuela attack Colombia in South America? Why shouldn't Russia attack Latvia in Northern Europe? where does it end? So I would suggest, again, peace may be enforced for a short time, and we can breathe and maybe not live in fear of being killed. And that's not a small thing. But true peace, long term, I believe, does require self-respect, respect for others, equitable economic relationships, and functional interdependence. I would encourage us to think about Joan Galtung and Lise Boulding, because their formulations make a lot of sense, and they are the foundation for peace studies programs. Now, in the next no more than 10 minutes, peace studies. Peace studies is an academic discipline. Most programs are in the United States and Europe, though they are elsewhere in the world. Most programs were developed after World War I. Academic programs. The idea might have been there for centuries, but peace studies as an academic discipline emerged mostly after World War I and has grown dramatically over the past 110 years to have over 600 institutions of higher education worldwide. Peace studies programs are oftentimes called peace studies, but they may also be called conflict resolution, or peace and conflict studies, or mediation and dispute resolution, or international studies, war and peace. Peace studies programs are called different names in different institutions. In places like the United States, we have over 400 institutions in the United States that have some kind of peace studies program. They can be at a 2-year institution, which is often a community college. And often they'll call that an associate degree of peace studies. At a 4-year institution, it's often called a bachelor's degree, Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science in Peace Studies. Of course, there's a master's degree in many institutions, and that is usually in the United States a 4-year bachelor's plus 1 year for a master's program. And then a PhD program like Columbia University, PhD in Peace Studies in New York City. A PhD is a 4-year bachelor's program plus a 1-year master's program plus a 1 year of study of classes for the PhD. And then there is the dissertation. And typically in the United States, I think this is true in many places in Europe, the dissertation, which is a book, you're writing a thesis. My thesis was a comparison of Gandhi and Martin Luther King. My thesis ran about 500 pages. It was a book. My thesis was kind of typical in terms of, it took me 3 years to write. At most institutions in the United States, you need to complete your thesis within 7 years of having finished your master's degree. So if you do the math, you can see the peace studies programs that have different structures, usually for a PhD, require a BA plus 2 years of classes plus up to 7 years of writing your book. I finished my PhD at the age of 29. And my PhD was in political science because there was no peace studies program at the University of Minnesota. Another thing that can be said about peace studies is academically it has come in waves. I live near the ocean, so I often see waves of water, yes? And the first wave of peace studies programs came after World War I and continued to break on the shore for about 40 years until about 1960. That wave was anti-war. The first peace studies programs were focusing on the international level and seeking to study war, the causes of war, and how war might be either reduced in frequency or possibly abolished. This is perhaps strange to many of you, but anthropologists agree academically that war has not always been part of the human condition. The first recorded, verified war was between the upper and lower Nile River Valley about 6,000 BC, about 8,000 years ago. Before that, of course, there might be murders. One person would murder another, but war is the intentional planned policy of one group against another to engage in lethal force. There is no indication that war as a human institution existed much before 8,000 years ago, 6,000 BC. Some cultures, like the native culture in Alaska in the US, they're known as Eskimo or Aboriginal native people in Alaska. They don't even have a word for war in their language. It doesn't exist. War doesn't exist as a word. And so, like slavery, war is something that can be reduced and potentially abolished as a human cultural institution. Peace studies programs, early peace studies programs in the United States focused on that. They focused on the anti-war international aspect. A second wave of peace studies came probably influenced by the civil rights movement in the United States and Martin Luther King. The second wave included human rights and domestic civil rights as part of the study of peace studies. It was a second level. We went from just the international level to the societal level in terms of studying and peace studies. Elise Boulding had a lot to do with that in the United States, who we've already mentioned from Colorado. And it was influenced because people like Martin Luther King were seeking to change the culture in the United States to have greater equality of treatment to people based upon race and other issues. Later, of course, after the civil rights movement with King, there have been women's rights movements. There have been movements for gay rights, LGBTQIA rights. Globally, there have been the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. So by 1960, many peace studies programs were beginning to go and study not just war, but also how conflict within a society and how human rights are relevant for peace studies. The last wave of peace studies began around 1990 in the academic circles. And this included a worldwide environmental concern. Many people were coming to understand that peace is not just the absence of war, it's not just the absence of conflict and the presence of human rights. It's also protecting the environment that gives us air to breathe and water to drink. How can you have peace between nations and peace among groups within a country if the environment is being so destroyed that people are dying because of the environment and what they have created? This third wave of peace studies certainly was integrated into the program that I helped to create at Portland Community College. It's not accidental that the year was 1990 when I helped to create a peace studies program, the first in the United States at any 2-year college institution. There are over 2,000 community colleges in the United States with 2-year degrees. Mine was the first to have any peace studies program. And when we created it, I included the third component. So we are part of the third wave of academic peace studies programs. There are still some in the United States that really just focus on the international level. They're very old, still very good peace studies programs, but they haven't expanded to include human rights or the environment. I wanted a peace studies program inspired by Elise Boulding, again, who I had met, to include all three waves. I hope that we can see the wisdom of Elise Boulding and also the need to focus on environmental destruction, which is not just about endangering human life, but it's also about endangering non-human life. Do you think that we are going to be immune from harm if 1 million species become extinct in the next 20 years? Well, I don't care about that insect. I don't care about that mammal. I don't care about the fish. Really, you don't? Over the past 40 years, scientists suggest that we, the human beings that are fishing the oceans, the rivers and the lakes, that we have made extinct over half of the fish species that existed 40 years ago. If you're a fish eater for food, this affects your diet. If you continue to overfish the oceans, as we have been, we will eat ourselves out of eating. Think about it. For the past 10 years, the data indicates that the human beings have taken more out of the ocean than the ocean has been able to replenish itself. We are literally eating ourselves out of eating, if you believe in fish in your diet. If we're not concerned about the extinction of species, so I would hope that we could be concerned about not having food for human societies in the future. So peace studies is now looking at the interrelationships of people and their environment. We have 20 minutes left, which is the minimum that I've always wanted to preserve for discussion. And I would like you now to make your comments or maybe ask a few questions. Let us have some discussion. Who would like to be first? Thank you. Please unmute yourself, Pascal.
Is it okay now?
Thank you.
I have a question. Are we going to learn or practice to have the occasion to practice non-dualistic view? It's my question.
Of course. You have the opportunity to practice that today. But you'll have the opportunity to understand it more for the 1 month we devote to Mohandas Gandhi. While Gandhi often will speak in either or terms, violence or nonviolence, he also very clearly had a non-dualistic view of nonviolence at the same time. And if we can understand and grasp his way of looking at the world, it may be more easy for us to practice that in our lives. It's a very good question. It's not easy, I can say from personal experience, it's not easy to practice non-binary thinking when the dominant culture around you is very, very binary.
Mm-hmm.
Not easy at all.
And is there some possibility to have some description of this way? Because I think, for example, to practice non-dualistic views mean first perhaps to struggle against your feelings. The first feeling you have in a conflict normally is hate or so that. And that's why I would be very curious to know if they have some description of a way, a little bit like, in Buddhism, you have the description of the past in 8 ways, a concrete description for us to go to this way of non-dualistic way.
Well, let me be honest. You may not be able to get that information very well from me. You may need to provide it yourselves. And this is why I do think we need to always preserve discussion time at the beginning of our session and discussion time at the end, so that each of you can help teach the class. Don't just depend upon me. I might act like a know-it-all, but I'm not. I don't know it all. I know my own struggle in an extremely binary culture. It takes many forms. What would be an example? Many peace groups in the United States were committed to nonviolence. Many very good people. Let us take, for example, Quakers, the Religious Society of Friends, as a religious group, are very committed to nonviolence. But they typically, not always, but typically are very binary. And so, when we're looking at the United States' involvement in Vietnam or another war, they will condemn, of course, the United States killing of Vietnamese, but they may also feel compelled to equally condemn people like Ho Chi Minh and those who were fighting against the United States. Oftentimes their view was violence is violence is violence. If no matter which side is killing the other, they are equally wrong. See, that is a very binary point of view. More influenced by Gandhi myself, my point of view would be the violence of the oppressor and the violence of the oppressed are not the same. Yes, they both are engaged in the killing of human beings. But from my point of view, the violence of the oppressor, in this case, the aggressor, in this case, the United States, with overwhelmingly superior firepower, is more to be condemned than the violence of the guerrilla fighters that were fighting against the United States. Yes, they were killing US soldiers. Often they were also killing their own people. But they were fighting against control and colonialism. From my more non-dualistic point of view, I am more likely to distinguish and even respect the violence of the guerrilla fighter, the Che Guevara, the Ho Chi Minh. I don't respect or hold up as an ideal their violence, but I hold up their courage, and they are fighting for what they believe to be right. And so oftentimes in the United States, I would conflict personally with other peace activists. They're being more binary in their way of looking at things, me being more non-binary. Does that make sense? And I see Ali, he was moving like he wanted to unmute. Ali, do you want to speak? And I also see others. Biju?
Yeah.
Let me give opportunity to others first, and we listen to them.
Okay, Biju?
Uh, um, we were talking, you just now mentioned the violence, the difference, the violence of the oppressor and the violence of the oppressed. Gandhi ji called a halt to the non-cooperation movement in the 1920-22, in 92, after people burned down a police station.
Yes.
in Chauri Chaura. And he called a halt to the whole non-cooperation movement, which was not welcomed by any other leaders or people as such. And Gandhi said that we are not yet ready for independence. There was a similar feeling towards
Let's see, have you frozen? There may be a connectivity problem. Huh.
That the whole issue of non-violence, people have not really imbibed. So is it that when we see the violence all around the world, is it because we haven't really understood non-violence, and we have not given non-violence to be, we haven't given more opportunity to practice non-violence at a group level, not as individuals, but as a group or at the state level. What would you say to this?
Well, first, I think in Chori Chori and calling off the movement in 1920, Gandhi was, of course, the recognized leader of that movement. And he did not want British police or anyone else to be killed in his name. So as the leader of the movement, he said, I call it off. I have the authority to call it off. You are not prepared for my kind of independence. Gandhi was always open to other people taking the lead. But as long as you are following my strategy as leader of the movement, then you must follow my strategy. We must be disciplined. If you choose another leader, I don't know, Subhash Chandra Bose, then you will have other strategies to engage in. And of course, Gandhi had significant intellectual and other conflicts with Subhash Chandra Bose, he still respected, but who advocated violent revolution. So in terms of your broader question, on the individual level, we see nonviolence all the time. Does a mother need to be trained to protect her child? If the child is in danger, is it not almost instinctual for a mother to be willing to sacrifice for the child? So on some levels, psychologists like Erich Fromm would argue that nonviolence is natural to a species if they want to remain alive. That is, a species will naturally sacrifice for the sake of its own and will not intentionally kill of its own species. There's an instinctual element. And then you can say, well, human beings kill other human beings. And that is very true. But again, this is a reality that, in terms of war, is shared only by certain species of ants in the insect world. Lions don't make war on lions. Elephants don't make war on elephants. Dolphins don't make war on dolphins. Human beings make war on one another, and maybe that is part of our rational capacity to rationalize. Yes? And first, to be able to kill my opponent, I need to dehumanize them. Yes? That's an intellectual process. I don't generally make war on my brother if I see them as a brother. But I will make war on them if they are a Nazi. I'll make war on them if they are a terrorist. I label them and I dehumanize them before I kill them. This is a fairly distinctive human trait. It takes effort. Studies during World War II among US military indicate that even with the best military training, US soldiers fighting in Europe against Hitler refused to shoot to kill over half the time. They were trained to kill. They were shooting Nazis. They were dehumanizing their opponent. And yet, over half of our soldiers either shot to miss or did not shoot at all, even when their own lives were being threatened. To me, that indicates psychologically that there is a reality within human beings as a species that make us reluctant to do harm to our own species. White people enslaved Black people in the Americas because they were not seen as part of the same species. There was a dehumanization there, you see? As soon as people of darker skin color were becoming more and more recognized by the dominant slave owner, as being human, it became more and more difficult to keep slavery as an institution. So we can use our rational capacity to kill, but we can also use our rational capacity and our inherent feelings and instincts to not kill. And then Mr. Gandhi would say, Mr. Gandhi, tell me, the history of humankind is a history of warfare. There have almost always been wars somewhere in the world. Does that not tell you about human nature? Does that not tell you how we are naturally disposed to be violent? And Gandhi would say, that's a good question. And then Gandhi would respond by saying, so tell me, what is history? History is mostly the recording of abnormal human behavior. What doesn't make the history books, usually, is the kindness that human beings show to one another every day in a very natural way. That doesn't make the news. You know, Ali helping two old women cross a busy street is not newsworthy. Ali killing two elderly women makes the news. What is Ali? Most of the time, I'm just looking at one person, yes. I could be picking on anybody. Be true. Amit. Most of the time, Amit is nonviolent. Gandhi's point is nonviolence is normally the natural state of humankind. And humankind is most of the time kind. What makes us unkind are cultural institutions, kind of group behavior that might almost be called a mob-like hysteria, and scarcity, where we are fighting over scarce resources. If we have a society that respects one another, that uses resources in an equitable way, and recognizes how we need one another to survive well, functional interdependence, we live in peace. Peace is normal. War is abnormal. For Gandhi, kindness is normal. Murder is rare and usually deserves to be looked at carefully in terms of what the circumstances are that created that behavior. But it is war and murder that make the news. It is war and murder that make the history books. It makes us appear to ourselves to be much worse than we really are. I see two hands.
Uh,
I
there
see
was
I see
was Dorothy first. I think she also wanted to ask, and then Shushil, and then Rahi.
Yeah,
Thank you, Amit.
thanks.
Let us go ahead.
I wanted to ask,
Uh,
you said it's like 400 universities you can study this science piece, science. How is it possible that we anyway have so much war, and where are these people working? Like, are they advisors for somebody, or it sounds like many people get educated in this field?
Well, 400 programs at over 6,000 institutions in the United States is a small percentage. And not that many people are enrolled in those 400 programs. And many of those people who are enrolled are maybe trained to be counselors or mediators, and they do go out into the field and promote greater harmony. But I don't know of any of those programs that actually train people to be nonviolent resistors against war. I mean, they may train people to be community organizers, and then you choose how to organize the community, and it might be anti-war protests. But for the most part, academics do not train people to resist and actively be change agents against the dominant society. Academic studies are extremely important, and they may inspire people to action, but I don't think most academic programs actually train people to be activists. Some do. Does that answer your question?
Thanks. Yes.
Now maybe we can move to Shushil's question. I think Shushil has been raising hand for quite some time.
Thank you, Shushil.
Yeah, hi Michael, how are you doing today?
I am good. You're looking very bad.
Not at all.
I can't see.
I have a question for you, Michael. What is the concept of creator and as peace for mankind? How can an individual manipulate the perception of God for their own selfish purposes or for their own mean political aspirations? What's happening in my country? A certain political party is trying to please the illiterate vote bank by projecting their God in a very selfish mean for their own aspirations.
Well, this is certainly not unusual. My group is better than your group. I'm a Christian and the rest of you are damned. I'm a Muslim and the rest of you are infidels. I'm a Hindu in India and the rest of you are not even Indians. Your culture did not come rooted in India. I am good. You're bad. I think this is an example of not only binary thinking, but also of people using their minds and their rationality to divide human family. Some people, perhaps even some cultures, may need to have enemies to feel good about themselves. But is that really a need? For me to feel good, do you have to feel bad? I think this is a psychological problem individually, and Mr. Trump has it, but it also can become a big psychological problem nationally if you think that way towards others. But it happens. You see it, Shushil. We have a choice. Do we want to be part of that? I don't. Rahik, and I know I'm not pronouncing your name right. Please just continue to educate me. But would you like to unmute?
Sorry, this is me. This is Rahel, but there is, I think, something wrong with the program because there's 4 Rahiq Al-Wardi in the program, and 3 of them is not me.
Well, then maybe the others will pronounce it differently.
Hi, أختي. Hi,
Oh,
أختي. This is my
I,
sister.
no, that's okay. You have your hand raised?
Yeah, maybe because I someday in the past I put my name on her program. Sorry.
Hmm. Well, if you have your hand raised and you want to speak, unmute. We are a little over time, but we will take one or two more people in the discussion, and then we can come back, of course, next Thursday and continue. What would you like to say? I am not hearing.
Sorry. Can I speak, please?
Okay. It seems to be a little connectivity. Yes.
I am the sister of Rahid, and I got the link from her. And
I am sad that sometimes the technology does not cooperate.
We cannot hear you, Rahik.
But I do hope if it doesn't work today, it can work next Thursday when we come back together.
Yeah.
Viju, do you want to have the last word for this day? Or perhaps Sibi Joseph?
Yeah. Do you think we should have more of Howard Zinn's alternative histories?
Well, I'm trying to think. The name is escaping me. There is an
alternative history of the United States.
Yeah, the Alternative History of the United States, a book written by
Howard Zinn.
Of course. That is embarrassing because I have met Howard Zinn, but I was having trouble remembering his name. It's a very good book. I mean, we can also, of course, point out how history falls short of including certain people and events. And Howard Zinn, who I believe was from Boston and Massachusetts, wrote a very good book that was widely distributed and very informative. Perhaps each of you can help write a similar book for your own cultures that go beyond the existing history to include more positive, inclusive elements of your society.
Perhaps, if that's okay, at the end of this course, maybe all of us could write one small chapter each on our countries or our community's alternative history.
Well, of course, we can do that voluntarily. And I'm not going to assign such a thing. That's not the power that I want to exercise. But if you want to please Biju, please write a little bit, and perhaps you can share it with Biju. And we need to inspire one.
Okay.
So, Sibi Joseph, you have been patient. You have been mostly silent. Can you share some final comments for our day today?
There is no finality. I was just reflecting when the question came about the binary and non-binary thinking. I think how Gandhi became non-binary, it is mainly due to the Eastern religious tradition, especially of Hinduism. The unity and oneness of all creation and the interconnected worldview he developed from that that greatly contributed to his non-binary thinking. Those who are in the Eastern tradition, it may be very easy for them to develop such a non-binary thinking. But those who are in the Western tradition, it will be always somehow difficult to have, we are all one, we are the part of the universe, one are interconnected, whether we are sitting in India, whether we are sitting in America, whether in Germany. Now it is somewhat difficult, but in the course of our discourses, I think we will be able to develop a non-binary thinking. And also when I was thinking about the non-violence, see, when Gandhi was talking about the ahimsa, he used as alternative terms as love, not in the limited sense of the term, but in a larger. Also, he said, my ahimsa is inclusive of compassion, and he used ahimsa and compassion as interchanging or both sides of the same coin. When we are looking at the peace, both negative and positive, I would like to call it as minimalistic and maximalistic, because even at the international level, no war is the basic requirement. On that foundation, we have to go to the maximalistic notion that, or the positive understanding. I think we cannot call it as a negative one. We should call it as minimalistic. That is what are some of the stray thoughts which came into my mind when I was listening to your wonderful presentation. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sibi, for sharing your good mind. We are over time today.
Yes.
I thank you for your patience, and I hope that you have found the discussion worthwhile. Next Thursday, when we come together, we will continue to kind of set a broad foundation for understanding the more specific views of Gandhi and King. And I propose that we will be looking at different paths to peace. And there are at least 24 paths to peace, major distinct paths. And I think they're not all paths of nonviolence. Or to put it differently, they might all have different degrees of violence and nonviolence. And so I think it's important for us to have a broad view, and then we can get back down into really focusing on Gandhi and King. I will look forward to seeing you all next Thursday.